Hi, welcome to Chad Silversmithing. First, thanks for visiting my channel. I appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button before you leave, that helps me out a lot. Um, Today I wanted to do something kind of grand and grandiose, so I'm going to make a big necklace piece with multiple stones in it. So I picked out a real pretty moonstone that's pear-shaped, and that's going to be the centerpiece, and then it's going to have some blue topazes that are faceted on the sides. And also some Mother of Pearl. There's quite a few bezels to make, so I'm going to make some of the bezels in advance, and I'll just show you how I make the three different kinds. But before we get started on the project, I wanted to thank all my subscribers. We just passed 3,300 subscribers, which is amazing and awesome. Apparently people are evangelizing my channel because I'm getting more and more people coming. So thanks for doing that, and I really appreciate it. Feel free to share it with others who might have similar interests. In particular, I'd like to thank my patrons over on Patreon as well. They're paying for the premium content that I provide over there, and they're forming a really nice community where there's lots of ideas exchanged, and we can look at each other's pieces and critique them and stuff like that. It's kind of a nice community. So if you're interested in joining that or supporting the channel in another way, check the video description. There's links for Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee. You can visit my website where jewelry can be purchased. There's a merch store link. There's all sorts of great stuff in the video description. I also always put the materials I use for a particular project in there as well. Um, so check out the video description, but let's get started on this project. So I picked out some real pretty stones for this one, I think. I've got this moonstone that's kind of pear-shaped. That's got some nice color to it. Oops, I just knocked everything out of position. I had those all neatly laid out for you. So I have this moonstone that's got a nice pear shape. I've got a trillion blue topaz and a couple of oval blue topazes, and then four of these little Mother of Pearl that got kind of a nice rounded top on them that have some pretty colors to them. And those are the ones I'm going to use for this piece. And so let's see what I got. Further and further back here. So, I'm going to lay this out how it's going to go. So I'm going to have three components. There's going to be this part down here, which is the main component, and then there's going to be a link here and a link here, and that on both sides. And then the stones will be in these places. I only drew one side of the actual piece, but it should have lots of fire and sparkliness with it, with all those on there. I think it's going to be pretty. I hope it comes out the way I'm envisioning it. But first things first, we got to make some more bezels, and then we'll start putting together the pieces that I'm going to use around here. The materials I'll be using are 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip. I think I got 26 gauge for these ones. This is mostly, I think, going to be 14 gauge square wire for the links here. I'm going to make some balls. This will be a silver ball, silver ball, silver ball, and silver ball up here. And underneath those, I'm going to have the connectors for these. So I'm going to use various materials for those. I'll put them in the video description, what I'll end up using. But I'll make the balls out of scrap. So, and then up here we'll leave a jump ring so a split chain can be connected, and then we should be good to go. So let's get started on some bezels. I think I'll start with the big one. Whenever you're making a bezel for something with a point like this, you never want to have the ends of the bezel meet at that point. That's going to cause you problems. So instead, I'll make the seam join somewhere along the long part of the side of the stone. So to start with, I'm going to make a sharp bend to accommodate that point. We can go from there. We'll get that as tight as we can. I always leave a little bit extra for filing purposes. Usually about the thickness of the pick that I use to scratch it. always want to make sure to file these nicely so that when you join the ends they have a nice seam. I think I'll do the little Mother of Pearl one too while we're here, because it's done pretty much the same as this, just minus the point on the stone. Sometimes I have days where I can't get a straight line. Other times it's super easy. If you're not good at filing straight edges, you could always get one of the miter vices. Those are nice for helping you to file straight lines. Oh, as always, I'm using hard sheet solder, and I use My-T-Flux from Rio Grande. Just a spray-on flux. My spray bottle nozzle is a little bit clogged, so it sprays sideways. Come back here. I kept that sharp corner that I made for the point of the stone, since I kinked it so hard. Pretty good on size there. Pretty good. The bottoms on these guys. Normally I use 26 for the backs, but I'm going to use 22 for the backs of everything on this one, just to make it a little bit sturdier, so that way nothing is hanging on to something flimsy. A couple of options here for this. Since I'm going to be adding some 14 gauge square wire that goes around like that, I think you can do it two ways. You can either solder it down to some sheet that's on the back here, or you can put the sheet on the bezel, file off the excess, and then wrap it around there and solder it on. I think I'm going to do the latter. I just seem to have better luck getting it nice when you're doing something like this if you do that route. So everybody asks about these shears. These are just Fisker's craft shears that you can get from Hobby Store. They work reasonably well for cutting silver sheet up to a point, but 22 is easy for them to cut. So it starts to get challenging around 18 gauge when you go to cut with those things. Oh, I throw, these are relatively small compared to the bezel, so 7 or 8 of these in there, and then I'll push them up against the sides. And for the smaller bezel here, I could probably get by with 2 or 3. So let's push these up against the side a little bit. Just need to make sure they're in contact with both the side and the bottom. One of the things that beginners run into with melting their bezels is they're using thick sheet on the bottom like this, or thicker sometimes, and the sheet itself is way harder to get up to that 1450 degrees because it's massive, and it's kind of underneath the bezel here, so getting that hot without melting the bezel, because the bezel's up top more exposed, doing that is a little bit challenging for beginners. You can get underneath it, you know, if you want to protect the bezel a little bit. If you get underneath it and heat from below, a lot of people use tripods for this. You can sometimes get it hot enough to get the solder flowing, and then flip it over here, and then you can finish the job. Right there, it's not quite touching. But you can see the seam flow around there once I put it just a little downward pressure on it. Don't push very hard though, because it'll tear the bezel. The metal seems to get pretty fragile when it's hot, as far as breaking and tearing. Okay. Now I'm just going to trim off the edges on these. Do a little filing to clean these bottoms up. Those filed. I'm going to do a little step bezel with the faceted stones, where I make a bezel and then I'll put some rings inside of it, solder to the inside of the bezel to raise it up so it has a platform to sit on, so we can have an open back and get the most light. So we'll do that real quick. This is a trillion, and it looks like about maybe a 6mm trillion. And again, since it has corners, I'm not going to put the end of the meat where these come together in a corner. I'm going to put them in the side. Solder it together, and then we'll shape it, and we'll build that step inside of it. Pretty good on the size on this one, I think. Now I'm just going to use some 18 gauge, and I'm going to make the exact same shape, just a slightly smaller so it'll fit inside, and I'm going to make it 2 layers high. So do it kind of the same way I did the bezel. Pretty close. I'm always going to cut it a little bit bigger. That way I can gradually remove material until it fits in there perfectly. Size-wise, that's good. I need to shape it a little rounded on this one side a little more. Okay, and I need to make a second one. Always make sure they're sitting in there flat before you solder them in. And get everything all fluxed. This guy's sitting right on top of this bunch of pieces of solder there. It's got a nice smooth bottom now. That's how you make all those bezels. Voila, there's all my bezels. Now I need to make some silver balls. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, well, 3 on each side, so 6 total. So let's make 6 pretty good sized silver balls. Let's try cutting off, measure that, see how long it is. So we're at 90, so that's about 20 millimeters long. Let's see how long that comes out. 25 millimeters. Okay, that's not big enough. I'm guessing about double that will get us close. I want it just a little bigger, so we got 60 millimeters there, 25. I'll make 85 total. Add those two together and see what happens. That's more the size I was thinking. I'm going to cool these off and then I'm going to file the bottoms flat. It's going to take a while to flatten the backs of these balls, so I'm not going to make you watch me do that. And I may use the Dremel for part of it. So, okay, I did a few things off camera. One, I filed the backs of the silver balls flat. The way I did that is I took a ball burr that was about the same size, carved a little kind of a hollow into my bench pin over there, and just set the ball in there, and then was able to file me much easier that way. I also punched out some similarly sized pieces of 22 gauge sheet, and then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of little steps on each of these, and then we'll mount a back from this, and two of them are going to be bezels. So I'm going to see if I can do this. I think I can. I guess it'll be a fun experiment. I'm going to try and cut off similarly sized pieces of square here. Okay, I got enough for 3 of them there. I'm going to show you a couple of what I'm planning on doing, and then the rest I'll do off camera so you don't have to watch me repeat myself over and over again. So here's one of the bezels. This way, here's one of the bezels. Here's one of the balls. And I'm going to take 4 of these here. And we're going to flux all that. And I'm going to cut some little tiny pieces of solder. Flux the back of that. Flux the back of that. And flux these guys too. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick solder a little bit of solder to the end that I filed on these. So I'm putting them on opposite sides of this. Let's put a little solder on these guys. So I soldered 2 posts basically on the back that are 14 gauge square wire, and I did the same thing on this bezel, and then I'm going to file those down so they're flat, and then I'm going to mount a little piece of sheet above. That way it's got a passage on either side for a loop to go around, and that'll make for a little link connector. So let's file these down a little bit. These are going to have to go in here like that, so it can't be any taller than 18 gauge wire. And I'm going to leave some room for movement, so I'm going to do it about that high, I think. Just putting a little puddle on the end of each of these. Okay, those look like they worked. So I just got to do all of them now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I'm going to not make you watch me do it over and over again. So, getting quite a few components here. I think it's time to start putting things together, but I need to create this thing that goes around this bezel before we start building these things. So I'm going to do that next. So I'm going to straighten out a little bit of 14 gauge square wire. Long piece off so it's less awkward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one of these off right where it meets, and then we'll solder it together, and we'll slide this over, and then we'll add this other one back on. Okay, so I'm going to try and mark this so it's pretty tight there. Cut it off a little bit long and then file it to that mark. pretty tight. Oh, that's still got a wave in it. You want to make sure it's pretty flat. See if we can't get that on there nice. Oh, I need to cut some solder first. You really don't want to be skimpy on a solder joint like this because you want it to really have a symmetrical seam all the way around. Make sure the flux settles down a little bit. Oops, I don't need any there. Oh, what am I doing? I'm making a bezel without realizing it. And I already made it. Okay. I'll put these underneath it. So I'm going to use this as a guide for how long to make it. I measured this morning when I was ready drawing this up. But now that I have a template, I can kind of just do it that way. You know, it might be smart if I wrap this around in order to get a little more consistency and save myself some time. Take like a big dapping punch and wrap it around it. I'm going to grab one of those. Let's just try wrapping it around this thing. To stop and correct the twist again. Anytime you're making multiple things of the same length of wire, usually keep one as a template. So, because invariably I will screw up on something and then I'll need to make more. You need to start thinking about bezels and stuff. It's going to be an oval faceted stone that's going to go here and on the other side, and then Mother of Pearl up here. So look at these, how much space I got in the middle of them. I think if I file them flat, like just go straight along these, it might be pretty close. It's close on those ones. You may have to bend them outwards a little bit more. So, let's see. We'll see. I guess I'll just go ahead and file them and then we'll find out. Got these ones filed and lined up, so I'm going to solder them together. Starting to take shape a little bit. Lighting. That'll be sort of nice looking. So one other thing, we need to solder this trillion stone. In the center here. That's close. So let's try this and see how big they come out. Off and see how they look. Basically need to solder jump rings onto the ends of everything. So let's get to it. So I'm pointing the split part of the ring this way. Might be enough solder here to actually solder these on, where I solder these kind of links closed, but I'm going to add. Those ones are pretty good. Okay, now comes the fun part. Seeing if we can attach these without inadvertently soldering stuff together. Try and pick it. I think I might use easy solder on these ones just to be safe. So it seems like one of those times where it might be handy. So I generally use just hard solder, but just to lower the risk of this going wrong. Partially because I'm getting tired. Ah. Hey, we still have movement. That's looking good so far. I'm gonna try doing one of the ball ones. Alright, so that is everything on this. I'm going to go ahead and let that pickle. I've been debating whether to make my own chain for the rest of it, but at least for tonight I think I'm going to split a chain and just put a jump ring on either end, and then you know, attach them here so we can take a nice picture. But I may eventually make a full chain for it. We'll see. But we'll let it pickle, and I'll clean it up and set the stones, and then we'll see what it looks like. Okay, we finally arrived at the end here. And I set most of the stones because it would have taken a long time, and it would have made this video really long if I didn't. So I set all the cabs, and I set this middle one here, but I left these last two to do in front of the camera. So, and I've already filed them down to the correct height, so it's just got a little tiny bit over the girdle of the stone. So I'm going to try and get it to hold still. Basically just working my way around, trying to make sure it's still sitting pretty flat. Because if you push too hard on one side when you're doing a faceted stone like this, it tends to pop it up. Burnishing on this one. Step. I'm just going to hook on. I split a chain and added a jump ring here. Just going to through this thing. So that's our basic piece. I need to do a little bit of cleanup polishing, but that's how it's going to end up looking. So, hope you enjoyed it. It was kind of a slog to get through this one because it had so many bezels, but I think it came out very pretty. So we'll see how it cleans up. Take care. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that piece. I think that I like the way it came out, and I'm glad that I tried this one because I've never made a necklace quite this, with quite this many components. I usually make relatively simple things, so it's kind of fun to try something different. So if you made it this far in the video, if you wouldn't mind, hit the like button before you take off, and check out some of my other videos. I have lots of great content here. I'm over 150 videos. I'm putting out 3 a week. There's a lot of great content here, whether you're a beginner or someone who has some more experience and just wants some idea stimulation. So if that kind of stuff appeals to you, make sure to hit the subscribe button as well, and maybe ring the bell so you get updates when I release a new video. So thanks for watching. Happy silversmithing.